Hello guys, I am back from another video, and today we're talking about what if Deku was an Oni. So in the last video we talked about how Izuku basically now, after becoming an Oni, he would be accumulating an entire mountain of bodies. Mostly from people that are being foolish, and also some that were, curious about what happened to this Buddhist sect, but now are turned into more food for Izuku, and several yokai decided to join him, mostly because they were afraid of being, killed by him. Not only that, some, yokai were also deciding to, try and take down his territory and take it for themselves, but unfortunately they're now in his, pile of bodies. After some heroes and also the policemen were also basically hearing about this little urban legend, they would try to find out what the heck is going on there, thinking that it's probably a wild animal or a villain that's a cannibal. So, after they arrived, let's just say they're now dead, including the heroes that were trying to, capture or subdue him. They were killed and turned into more food for him. Ever since that day, they were also, scared. Not only that, one of these policemen, specifically one that had a little camera on his, uniform, this camera is connected to Principal Nezu's and the chief's laptop, which they watched. After watching that Izuku was actually an Oni, they were freaking afraid. And ever since that day, they were trying to find a way to try and defeat him. And also, these, specific, yokai were kind of afraid of him to the point that they considered him as a fourth member of the top 3 most powerful yokai. But the top 3, yokai, or the most powerful yokai, are basically gone. They're dead. So, unfortunately, they no longer have authority over these yokai, and Izuku is now considered as the most powerful yokai ever in Japan. So because of this, he decides to get some rest and also has a superiority complex, which is pretty much prevalent. But he's not as, prideful as Bakugo, and more of a, psychopath that eats anything on sight. So yeah, after basically killing those officers and those heroes, he would decide to get some sleep, and that was basically the end of that episode. So, let's talk about what happens next. So, we start off, Izuku's day, basically training with his, sword, which he got, in the first episode. If you didn't watch the first episode, then go to my channel and just, watch it first. So, after a while of training with, some of the weaker yokai decided to join him, which they were scared that they might cut off, some of their body parts, so they would start running away, but Izuku absolutely loved it, and it was also some great training for him. He would also, train with his kanabo, using some of the nearby trees to, it's basically deeper, what do you actually call it? Let me just pronounce it right. It's basically deforestation, so he's basically destroying all of the trees to make a clearing. So, after doing that, he would decide to make dinner, which is basically just like the rest of the body parts that he didn't really eat. And he would make a large bonfire as he would grab the large kettle that he also carried. Actually, it's not really a kettle, it's more like a, cauldron, which he would make, human blood stew, or I like to call it slaughter stew, which is a reference to a certain game which recently came out. If you can guess the name, just comment down below. After doing that, he would, after basically eating dinner, he would go to sleep. So, let's go to a different perspective, because this is going to be important, because we're going to be going to the first half, which is Izuku finally going into the city and reintegrating into society. So yeah, let us begin. So we go to Nezu in a room with the heroes, specifically Midnight, Mirko, Aizawa, and Endeavor. So after being, brought the footage about Izuku basically killing everybody, including, eating them, they were kind of horrified. As for Endeavor, this, I will burn down that Buddhist sect, that monster, as you would start causing so much flames to basically, burn half of the room, as Nezu would try to calm him down, as one certain, Aizawa would say this. This problem child. As one of them would say this, being Mirko. That guy looks strong. Maybe I can probably take him, but maybe this will be a good fight for once. As one of them specifically, wait for a second. Midnight was basically horrified, and thinks would, be a better idea to just subdue him and basically try and reintegrate him into society by using her sleep gas to basically just capture him and maybe, brainwashing him. Not foreshadowing. So, after doing that, or at least thinking of that idea, Nezu would tell them to be dispatched towards that, Buddhist sect, as after being told of this, they would start going towards that Buddhist sect as well, with the rest of some high-level, heroes that are not from the top 10. So, yeah. So, after being brought there, they started going up the stairs, but for Endeavor, he would decide to fly, and also Mirko would just decide to jump. As for... Actually, most of them would actually just, use their abilities to their advantage, but as for Midnight, being a hero that wears high heels would be hell for her. So, yeah. So, after a while of, walking, specifically for, Midnight herself, they would see that, the Buddhist sect is littered with bodies. They can smell the blood, even though it's pretty much ages upon ages ever since they came to this face for the first time. And I'm not even joking, they actually did go to that Buddhist sect for the first time, which was many years ago before, Izuku came to be. So when they first saw this place, it was a drastic change. They would see several, skulls basically adorning this place, as they would hear the sounds of cheering, as they would start going into the place where that cheering is basically going on, being the statue, or the statue room, of that Ashura. When they saw, something there, in this case, a party between, some yokai and some ghosts and many other, mystical creatures in, Japanese mythology. But most prominently, Izuku is currently just, watching all of this, basically, drinking blood sake. You probably know this reference from, Shuten Doji being... in legend, he actually drank blood sake, which is just, sake but blood, basically. So, after Izuku's basically just watching this, Endeavor would be so pissed off that he would start causing fires across the, temple. When the, yokai saw this, Izuku would also see this, as he would break down the doors, as he would say this. Who the hell destroyed my home? As he would look over and see the heroes there, as he would say this. Why, you little... As he would grab his kanabo, as he puts it over his shoulder, as he would decide to do this. Alright. Because you destroyed my home, I'm gonna take something much more valuable than that. Your life. As he would charge over and charges towards Endeavor, thinking that he was the one that basically, caused the fire. I mean, yeah, he did cause the fire, because he literally has a fire quirk. And it's super prominent because, the fire beard mustache. Actually, let me check if he really had a... yes, he really did have, a, flaming mustache and beard, so, yeah, I was kind of right. So, Endeavor would start causing fires across, the entire, yard, but Izuku would not be affected, as Endeavor would say this. How the hell did you? As, well, you know, wait for a second, god dang it. As Aizawa would say this. Hey, it's my turn now. As Endeavor would say this. Fine, but try and at least kill him. That monster doesn't deserve to live. As he would say this. Seriously? Besides, he was just a problem child. So, his eyes would start glowing blood red, as Izuku would say this. What is that supposed to do? It did nothing to me. As Endeavor would say this. What? As Aizawa would say this to himself. It didn't work? Wait, he's probably just bluffing. As Izuku would say this. I guess then, I guess it's time for me to show you my brand new move. I've been learning this for a while now. As he unsheathed his blade, as he would start charging towards him at full speed, almost looking like he just disappeared. As he reappears behind Aizawa, as he would say this. He says, Ishuna Daitensho. After he did that, Aizawa would get several body cuts all around his body as he would say this. The hell? And I even used my quirk. So that means he's really... As Mirko would come out of the shadows as she would say this. Take this! As she would kick Izuku right across the face, saying, take that. How do you feel about... As she would look over as Izuku would say this. Really? As he would spit out a tooth, as he would start grinning at her, as his tooth would just be regenerated, as he would say this. Really thought that you can actually beat me by just kicking me? As Izuku would grab his kanabo and basically just whack her across the face, well, just like pushing her away a few feet away from like the actual yard, as Izuku would say this. So, you actually thought you can actually beat me? You can actually just beat me down with your stupid ass quirks? I'm a fucking Oni. And even if you try to kill me, I'll just regenerate. As one of them would say this, being Aizawa. Oh, we know. But we do have another plan for you. As Izuku would say this. Oh, then what is... As he would start smelling something sweet. As he would say this. What the heck is that? As he would start feeling kind of nauseous. As everybody realizes that it's midnight. As Midnight would say this. How do you like that, Aizawa? As Aizawa would say this. Whatever. As Izuku would just say this. How annoying! As he would grab his blade. As he would cause all of the, well, gas that was being emitted by Midnight, as it would be blown away instantly. As it would be blown towards Endeavor, causing him to basically fall asleep pretty much easily. As Midnight would say this. What? How is that? As Izuku would say this. Why you? As he would grab his blade as he says this. Time to die, you little bitch. As he would start charging in, saying, Ishuna Daitensha. As he would get kicked across the face by, well, Mirko, as she would say this. Are you okay, Midnight? As Midnight would say this. Yeah, pretty much. How did he even... As Izuku would say this. You... As Izuku would say this. Just die. Just die, just die, just die! As his eyes would start turning into a more bluish color. As he would start charging towards, well... Wait for a second. Mirko, as Izuku would say this. Just die. I don't even care if my body just rots away. I don't even care. I just want all of you to get away. As Mirko would say this. What the heck is wrong with this kid? As Izuku would say this. I'm not a fucking kid. Just because I'm fucking 10 years old, it doesn't mean that I'm a fucking kid. As one of them would say this, being Aizawa. Wait, he's 10 years old? And with that power? As Izuku would say this. Mirko, you must die! As he would start charging towards her. As Mirko would get several cuts across her body. As he would start using his, kanabo to basically just bludgeon her. It doesn't kill her, but Aizawa would use his scarf to basically just pull, Mirko out of the way as he would start charging towards, Izuku. As Aizawa would start trying to fight him with hand-to-hand combat, but it doesn't work because Izuku literally has a freaking sword. As for Aizawa, he does have a scarf, but for some reason, it cuts through the goddamn scarf without any freaking force. As Aizawa would say this. What? As Izuku would say this. You really think that a stupid scarf can actually kill me? Really? As Izuku would say this. Now just die, both of you. All of you. All of you shall die. As Izuku would say this. Now. As he would start wielding both his kanabo and his blade, as he starts not really transforming, but more, gaining more power every time when he starts, using, his blade more. As his horns would start growing a little bit longer, as he would say this, now, he should not die, Tensho! As he would start using these slashes start turning into a bluish color, which cuts the whole forest into, basically clearing the whole forest in an instant. Everybody would just be terrified as everybody starts running away. But as for Izuku, everybody is gone, including his home, the home that he grew up within. It's now burnt to the ground, turned into ashes. Izuku would be pissed, saying, "My home, it's gone. It's all thanks to them. It's that Endeavor's fault. It's that Endeavor's guy's fault. He shall..." As Izuku would fall to the ground, banging his head on a piece of debris, which causes him to be, in this dreamlike state. So, let's go to a different perspective, shall we? So, we move to a green-haired girl with almost vine-like hair, and they also see a girl with basically she has brown hair that basically covers up her eyes. Resembles, vaguely look like a mushroom for some reason. As this girl would speak up, "Hey, Ibara, why are we going to that Buddhist sect? You know it's prohibited. Besides, I heard it's haunted by an Oni." As Ibara would say this, "Well, don't worry, Kinoko. Besides, if there is an Oni, God is going to be protecting us, including with my skill." As Kinoko would say this, "I'm sure it's probably a bad idea." As they would see the heroes basically running away. Being the heroes specifically, Mirko, Aizawa, Midnight, and Endeavor. As Ibara would say this, "Did you see that?" As Kinoko would say this, I think I did." As they would say to themselves, "Why is Endeavor knocked out, and why is what's that Aizawa guy?" Which they know because of a certain, website which they kind of learned from heroes, which apparently Aizawa's kind of overpowered, and they do know about, the other heroes, specifically, Mirko and also, Midnight, which they're kind of scared on what happened over there in the mountains, or more specifically in that Buddhist temple, which it's literally almost nighttime, which they kind of see that that place, specifically the temple, seems to be quite bright for some reason. As when they do, they see that the entire place is basically burned to the ground. As one of them would specifically say this, I think that might have been Endeavor's fault. As you would see, Izuku basically knocked out cold. Basically, he's now knocked out. As one of them would say this, eek! Being, well, Kinoko. As she would say this, that must be the Oni Ibara. As Ibara would say this, don't worry. He might just be a quirk user. As she would say this, are you sure? I heard in some of the news that, well, this Oni seems to have eaten people. I also heard from the news that this man or whatever seems to be eating several heroes. I even heard it from a man that his friend is basically gone because of him. As Ibara would say this, don't worry. Besides, we have God's protection. As Kinoko would say this, I guess. As Ibara would say this, now, Kinoko, maybe we should bring him to our house. As she would say this, why? That sounds crazy. As she would say this, maybe we can convert him to the good side. As she would say this, I guess, but I'm kind of worried. As she would say this, don't worry. Besides, if he were to try and attack us, we can just clearly beat him thanks to our quirks. As Kinoko would say this, that's what I'm worried about. So, they would try to carry Izuku, including his weapons, but the sword was kind of easy to carry, but the, well, Kanabo was completely, well, out of the question. Because, after all, that Kanabo is basically super heavy. By the way, both, well, Kinoko and Ibara are also, well, 10 years old. So, wait for a second. Kinoko would decide to, try and carry the sword, and as for Ibara, with her hair being basically just vines, would carry the Kanabo and Izuku in her vine-like hair. So, after basically just bringing them, or specifically Izuku, to their home, which after her parents basically noticed that Izuku is basically just like, basically like that, and not only that, he literally looks like he's about to, well, die, they would decide to treat him, and after that, they would basically put his weapons down because they think it's probably best for now. So, after, well, let me check. After Kinoko and also Ibara basically bring them, or at least like Izuku to their house, and now, they're trying to find a way where they're gonna be, well, putting him to sleep. What I mean by this, well, they're trying to find a perfect place for him to go to sleep in. So, Kinoko was told by Ibara that it's better for him to sleep in her house as Ibara would start leaving, as Kinoko would say this, wait, why me? As she would look over and see Izuku basically still sleeping. As she would say this, I guess I should just... As she would, put out like this, almost like, well, specifically, this is a Filipino thing, at least I think so. I mean, the Japanese also do this, but in, like, Filipino culture, they can also, like, sleep on the floor, which is pretty much simple. They basically just, like, put up the mat, and put in, like, a, almost like a soft, like, fabric or something like that. Like, for example, like a, what do you actually call it? Mattress. So, after putting that down, Izuku was told, or at least like, Kinoko would, struggle, kind of, on trying to put Izuku in that, little spot, or his new, sleeping quarters. So, after, pushing him to that, little spot, she would decide to go to sleep right now in her bed. So, yeah, this is actually going to be the end of this episode. But before you leave, um, I hope you're excited for, what if, Belle was a BOW from Resident Evil, because I'm pretty much excited for that what if. So, yeah. And also, if you're wondering, but that's actually a copy of, the X What Ifers, what if? I know, but I got permission from, the X Whatever, and he's also my friend on Discord, if you probably don't know. Well, me and him are actually quite good friends, and we've been, talking about, what ifs for a while now, and also helping him about, ideas for, some of his what ifs, which I'm not going to be telling because they're actually a surprise. Not only that, he also gave me permission on making this, new what if being the Bell BOW what if. So yeah, I hope you're excited for that what if tomorrow, and so I hope you liked the video, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye!